Hello everybody, welcome back. Decaff here. Today we're going to continue our project, but we're going to be working on the tail logo. So we're going to be working on the logo back here of the bird. So I have already downloaded an image and saved that into the right place. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you how to open up images in Blender to use them as references. So I'm just going to go ahead and clear all this stuff, and we're going to go to View, Background Image, and then we're going to click Use Background Image, and then we're going to load one. So I'm going to go to Lufthansa and open up the logo. So now we see we got our logo in here, and we can change how opaque it is with this little slider here. The very opaque or not very. We'll leave this as 0.5. But then we can also change the size. I recommend bumping up the size quite a bit, just so that you can have a much larger area to work with, and then when you go ahead and shrink it down in the model, your resolution is a much better quality. So let's go ahead and start working on this. What we're going to want to do is insert a new blank plane. So here we go. And I'm going to go straight into wireframe mode, and this is where I'm going to spend most of my time. I'm going to spend most of the time in wireframe mode, and what we're actually going to do here is not start off with a plane. Generally, if I'm going to be working on little decals and things, I start off with a plane, but because this is a circle, we're going to start off with a circle, and 32 vertices is good. We're going to fill it, and we'll say OK. So we're going to move this to 0, 0, 0. There we go. And then scale it to the outer side that we need. And one thing that you should notice here is that the image center for the circle is not exactly center for the model itself. So we have to be careful and get this set up right. Let's also take a look at what else we got to do with our model here. Notice that we got an extra yellow ring there. So what we're going to do is we're going to add that in here. So we're going to go into edit mode, and we're going to start off by scaling this out just a little bit further, and then we're going to start doing cuts. What we're going to do is we have two more cuts that need to be made, one for the outer blue ring and one for the inner blue ring. So we're going to go with the multi-cut, and we're going to go 2 because we need 2 more cuts. And we're going to just cut all the way around, like so. And then, very carefully, we're going to select the vertices, or you could select the edges here. We're going to select each of these rings and scale them to the right point. Now for the center one here, it's very easy. We can just select everything in there and scale it up. There we go. So that is the base image that we're going to work with. So that's my first little bit there. I'm not going to do any painting or anything here. I'm going to start going in to working on the bird now. I'm going to make the bird as a separate element, and then afterwards I can merge the two objects together. One thing I will do right now though is delete the center vertex. Actually no, I will not delete the center vertex, I forgot, because we need the yellow in here. But if you had something where you didn't need a color on the inside, you could delete the center vertex and get rid of a lot of faces, and that would help reduce some lag. So let's go ahead and insert a plane this time. Yes, there we go. And you want to move the object center to roughly where your center is going to be here. And now we're going to work on just manipulating all of these vertices. So I deleted those 3, and I'm just going to move this vertice to where I need it and just duplicate with Shift D to all of the other places where I'm going to go. So what I'm doing right now is just getting a fairly basic outline of what we're going to be working with here. What I'm going to do later is come back in and touch up where all these vertices are to make sure that they're really at the edge and, you know, in about the right spot. What I'm doing now is just getting them into the general location so that moving them later when I zoom in is much easier. So this process can be quite boring, very tedious, but the artwork that you can make here is pretty spectacular. I've been able to make some really cool things here. I'll take a moment in a second here to show you a couple examples once I finish getting these little tail feathers done. Alright, so let's go ahead and save this. We're going to just call this logo. I like to use underscores rather than spaces and things like that, just so there's no confusion. And oops, there we go. Save as. So now let's go ahead and open up what I wanted to show you. Visit 2008. There we go. Oops. All right. So I'm going to open up a new one. Delete all this, and what I'm going to do here is import a surface model. When we are finished with our decal here, what we're going to do is export as a .srf file so that we can bring it and import it into our model for Blender. So here is the SRF file for one of my Indonesia airline paints. And you can see there's a lot of vertices in here. In this particular one, the text here, the font was custom, so I couldn't just use a regular old default font. I decided to go in-depth and really work at it here. Luckily I was able to reuse a few things like with the O's and the T's and I's and N's and things by duplicating things. So wherever you can save time by duplicating, go ahead and do that. Take the time. So I'm going to ignore this now. I'm not going to save it or anything. Just open. Oops. There we go. Open up our logo for Lufthansa and go straight back into editing these. Now this is just going to be a fairly rough logo. If you really want it to go in detail, you can go really crazy with the vertices in here, but that's going to come back to haunt you when we are working on both A, refining where the vertices are, and B, when it comes time to make all the faces to paint. So now that I have all the vertices in place, let's go in and touch these up. These look okay. We'll move this over a little bit. That looks fine. Those two are okay. That one really needs to get moved. That one looks alright there. Sometimes you'll have to zoom out to find any vertices that you might miss. Yeah, it looks like these guys are getting a little touch up. Now, any work that we do here, we're going to go back and redo some of this work later to refine it even further. So let's go ahead to that step right now. What we have right now is just a whole bunch of vertices, and what we need to do is make these vertices into faces. So to do that, what we're going to do is select up to 4 vertices and press F. And what that does is it automatically creates a face. Now to make a face we have to have 3 or 4 vertices selected. We can't have 5 or 6 or more than that. That's just the way that Blender works, especially with the YS Flight modding. So you gotta pick and choose where you're gonna make these. It can take some time to get them right. But it's worth the effort to get them into the right position and work with them. You can really save a lot on lag and things like that in this step here. If you make sure that your faces aren't really crowding together. So where you have a whole bunch of things coming together, really close vertices here, you can move them around a little bit or try to get a little different angle. So this is pretty straightforward work here. There we go. It can't, like I said, it can be pretty boring and really repetitive, but this is necessary to make custom settings, custom decals and things like that. Alrighty, here we go. Up to the top. Finish these guys off. Generally, I like to do 4 vertex shapes just because it saves time in the long run. But there are certain times when you have to go with what you have available, and that's triangles. So don't be afraid to experiment with the different shapes that you're making. And if it doesn't come out absolutely 100% perfect, don't worry about it. Alright, so now that we have all the faces in there, now we can work on getting everything set up right. And it looks like I made a little mistake here. Oops. I'm going to delete the edges there. So I still have those vertices left over. So I'm going to make that face there, there, there. There we go. A little more refined. Bring that down a little bit. Bring this in a little. So when we have the faces in here, now we can actually see where the edge of our decal is going to be. So we can get a little bit better idea of how we need to move the vertices. So after you've got them positioned pretty well, you go back in and just touch them up. Make sure they're covering the things that they're supposed to be covering. There we go. Alright, move that down a little bit. Move this up a little bit. Go down, move that in. It's really when you zoom in that you find the little things that can help make your decal a little bit more realistic. Alright, those all look good. Oop, forgot a little section in here. There we go. Okay, so this looks pretty good. So there we go. Now that we have our shapes all made, now it's time to go and work on painting them. So let's go into textured mode, and we see from this side only this little bit in white. Well, that's a problem, and we can fix that fairly easily. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is that you can only see the image when you're using one of the 7, 1, and 3 viewpoints. In this case, I was on the 7 viewpoint. That's a pretty important thing to remember when you're working on this. So let's go in here And we're going to select all the faces here except for these three. And what we need to do is flip the normals on this so that they're facing in our direction right now. So we're going to hit W, and then down here, halfway down, flip normals. And now we can see the rest of the white from our mesh. And we're going to do the same thing with the other object. If it's still here, there we go. I'm going to select all, flip normals. Now we get a little bit confusing here. So these are pretty much overlapping features. So what I'm going to do is raise this bird up just a little bit. Not that much. Let's go 0.05. Just so it's slightly off of the circle in the background. And what we're going to do here is get our yellow color, which I have here. And we're going to select everything because it's mostly yellow. Go to Vertex Paint, press the F key to get into the face mode, and we'll type in our yellow numbers here. 90.7, oops, 0.907, 0.59, 0.058. And we're going to set that there. Then select all of these little guys there. It can be a pain to select them all, but it's what we got to do. And we're going to change this to our blue color, which was 0.095, 0.162, and 0.344. There we go. Go in textured mode to actually see that. There we go. And now all we got to do is paint our little bird. Well, lucky us, it's all one color, which happens to be blue. And there we go. There's our decal. Well, one final thing. I got to merge the bird into the background. So there we go. There is our decal. So this is how you can make any custom decal that you want. Go ahead and hide that. Now, one final thing that we got to do to make sure that this is going to work in our model, we have to export this as a .srf file. SRF is a non-animated piece of our airplane that will be imported using Blender into our regular model. So let's go ahead and export this as an SRF file. I have a whole bunch of other file types here. If you are just using the default Blender, you're not using the Blender with all the scripts installed for Wise Flight, you're going to need to go and install those scripts in order to export as a .srf file. And so now we can go ahead and export it. There we go. And now let's go and open up our model. Let's save this first. And open Recent, open Lufthansa, open up our Lufthansa model. There we go. And now let's go ahead and import our SRF logo. And there it is. And you can see it's nice and big. We can move this around. One thing that you have to do when you're importing an object like this is you can move it around, but then you got to deselect it and then select it again before you can go into edit mode. It's just one of those things. It's a little quirk with Blender. Don't worry about it too much. So now let's check our model, and we see that the bird is going in the other direction. So what we can do is go back to Blender here. We can scale this in the X direction by -1, and it's flipped around wonderfully. This is a very, very handy tool, scaling. It saves us a lot of time and effort. And there we go. So I hope you really find this useful. It took me a while to get comfortable with importing the images and making these files, these decals. custom decals anyway. So go ahead and practice. Bring up some images that you want to bring in. Have some fun with this. Pay attention to some details that you want to do. But remember that you don't have to go overboard on the details. You can get away with a little bit of choppiness because you're going to shrink these down a bunch if you remember to scale them up big as an image when you're just making them. So if we were going to get this into the right size, now this is going to be something much smaller than that. Probably something like that. And so now any choppiness that you see, well, you have to really zoom in order to see it, which is fine. I don't really care, because at that point the resolution is not needed. So go and practice this a lot. I really hope that you'll find this useful. Next time what we're going to do is bring this and merge it with the tail and make it so that part of this will rotate with the rudder. That is something that can be a little tricky, so we'll work on that next time. Happy modding.